Okay, there was once a guy that he had to have parnasa for his family, and he was trying different jobs. I guess he found the best job for him is to steal from Chevra money. He didn't have too much of a choice, and he has to support his family. So he decided to steal from people. But everyone knows that all jobs are risky, especially this job is a very risky job. You might get caught, you might get busted. And he knows that there's only one that has any power in this world. It's just God. So he goes to shul, and he davens, he cries his heart out to the Eibishter how he needs to support his family, and he's asking Hashem to have help in him stealing money. So everyone knows the way it's still a bit interesting story, because on one hand, he's asking God because he knows God could do anything. He knows God is the only power in this world, and that's why he's turning to God. And at the same time, he's stealing, which stealing means that you don't believe God could give you the money in a different way. So it's called Tarti Desase. It's like a contradiction. So some people say it's just fake. But we know that this is like this story is the biggest backbone of Chassidus Chabad. This is the whole explanation of Chabad. This is the proof that however much belief in God is important, but it won't get you too far in life. You could believe in God, and you could also be Mechal Shabbos, you could go steal, you could do everything against God also. Because belief, it's very important, but it's very abstract to the person. Our whole job of Chabad, which by the way is not Chabad, that's what Dir B'Tachteinim is. That's the point of Mashiach, is to pull down this abstract belief that we have in God. It should come all the way down Tachteinim. What does Tachteinim mean? And I always think, so the first thing is that whatever you believe, this thing that there's a God in the world and about the Eibishter, you should be able to understand that also. It should come to that's called Tachteinim. Your brain, that is the Tachtein. People don't understand that. That's why it's very important also to get this point to other people also, because the Havat Samayonis, the whole Dir B'Tachteinim is through Chassidus, and Chassidus Chabad especially, because that's when you actually understand everything about the Eibishter. Someone's going to say, but you can't understand God. No? Like you can't understand even something that you're not able to see. You can't understand. Only a table you can understand, whatever you're able to understand about a table. But how could you understand things that they're not able to see? Like it's describing color to a blind person. Like the story of the Rambam, that he proved the guy wasn't born blind, because if he knows what colors are, it's impossible to describe color to a blind person. It doesn't exist in his world. So how could we claim the whole Chabad Chiddush that you're able to understand God? And by the way, it's not Chabad, it's Chabad, it's the Chumash. It says veyadata hayoim, you should understand. It doesn't only mean you should believe. It doesn't say, I don't think anyone you should believe in the Eibishter. The question, what does it mean? But especially that there's things that you're able to understand, we shouldn't waste our belief on things that you're able to understand. The fact that I'm here in this room right now, you don't believe I'm in the room. You know I'm in the room. It's much more concrete understanding and knowing, and that's what actually affects you. Not when you just believe, because belief could be whatever, because it doesn't affect your davening, it doesn't affect your learning, it doesn't affect the way you behave with other people. So the question is, are you able to really understand something which you never saw and something that doesn't exist in your world? So one of the examples Chassidus gives, or maybe the example Chassidus gives, is the fact that there was once a guy, I think it was last year, he was giving a drasha on Shabbos in Montreal, and he, a regular healthy guy, a very close friend of mine, he gave the drasha, he sat on his chair, boom, he left the world. It could be people know the story, it's not to get who the person is, and this thing happened, saying these things happen, right? And like, let's go into this episode over here. You have someone that's talking, it's walking, it's laughing, and smiling, and looking, and 3 seconds later, he can't see, he can't speak, he can't move. What happened to this guy? So the truth is, no one knows. No one in the world knows what happened. No one knows what this thing is. But it's obviously, you have to say that there was something in this person that was giving him energy to move, to walk, to speak, to hear, to listen, to see. What this thing is, no one knows. No one ever saw it before. And something that you never saw, you can never know what it is. But it's obvious that something exists, because before he was moving, there was energy there, and afterwards, it's the same person, it's the same exact body. I don't know if you ever saw someone after 120, it's the same exact eyes, same exact ears, same exact mouth, everything is the same. What happened, no one knows. We decided to call this thing a soul. That there's, some guys are going to say there's no soul, it's just the energy that he has. Okay, so call it energy, call it a battery, call it whatever you want. Pump it, whatever you want to call it, but you don't have to believe that there's something called a soul. A soul is you're able to understand it, and you're able to understand it very well also. It's called you're able to see it with the eye of your brain. That's logically the en hasechel. You can't see it with your eye, but if you have a little bit of brains, you don't have too many brains, you know that there's something called the soul, because you see afterwards, there's no difference physically, you don't see the difference. So there has to be a difference, that's something that you can't see. And you think a little bit more, you're able to understand that, forget about when the person passed away, the soul left him. Even before he passed away, the person was also really dead. The eyes can't see, the ears can't hear, Well, I see the guy's walking. Well, obviously, what's the main part of the person? That energy that left, obviously, that's the main player. Now, as of right now in the room, every person over here has the body and the soul. Right? And again, you don't have to believe in these things. It's a fact. You could feel it. That is the soul. With that breathing, that the energy that you feel in you, that is the soul. And we have it right now. So I'm going to ask you right now the question, what's the main thing? What's the main part of your life? Is it the body or is it the soul? What's the main part over here? So obviously, you want to understand, so let's separate it for a second. We'll see what's going on. If you take the soul out of the body, there's nothing to the body. There's no powers. There's nothing there. Which means that even before it dies, the body's dead the whole time. It's the soul that's giving it energy. Who's listening to me? If someone's listening to me right now, right? So who's listening right now? Who's understanding? Is the nefesh. This is the nefesh. Which means you are able to understand things, although you don't see it, you could understand a lot about it also. And if you think about it again and again, you realize that the main part of your life is the nefesh. Some people, they always think what you see, that's real. What you see is nothing. When you get older in life, you understand that the real existence is what you don't see. So that's after you understood, and by the way, also goyim have this energy, right? Also goyim are walking and they also have energy in it, right? Also animals have also some sort of energy. You see that they have life. And also trees have this energy. Also rocks, everything, right? This is God. This is the level of the Eibush that's called Memali Kol Almin. Which means you don't have to believe about the existence of God, you're able to feel it by yourself. That is Elikus. That is the level of godliness which is in this whole world, giving it life every second and second. And the truth is, it's by the end of the day, you can know about this concept, it still won't get you too far in life. It's very funny. You thought that the robber, the thief, he believes in the Eibush there, doesn't affect him, he can still steal afterwards. So the truth is, it goes even a step further. Even if you understand Chassidus, I know a lot of guys understand Chassidus pretty well, but it still doesn't affect them. They still could do different things, could embarrass someone else, and they could act like different people, and which they learned and understood it very well. Because in your understanding, obviously Chokhmah is the first level, Bina is even more important, because that's what you can actually, but if you just have Chokhmah and Bina, you still won't get too far in life. Right? So everyone knows the same sort of Chassidus, you have to have, what the Torah says is veyadata, which means you have to connect to this concept every day, again and again and again. Because by the end of the day, you could know there's a soul, but what do you see in the mirror? What do you see in the street? You just see the body. You just see the external part of the energy. And that's why it's very easy to always to go back to step number one, this big klippe and this big sheker that there is, that the body is the main thing. That's why every morning, again and again, you have to think and you have to understand this concept. And when you do that, when you connect to the concept, that's when you see that actually affects you. Even then, it doesn't really affect you it doesn't really get you until you actually experience it afterwards in life. Right? And everyone goes through these experiences in life. When a person has a challenge, when a person has some sort of, and then you're able to bring whatever you learned in seminary this whole year or your whole life, it only comes real to you when you actually live it. You can learn how to drive a car from today to tomorrow. You're not going to know how to drive a car until you sit in the car, and when it's raining, okay, I'm not going to learn now. No, that's the way you'll learn how to drive the car. When it's sometimes raining, sometimes it's going to be a little bit hard, and you know how to deal with the matziv, that's how you learn how to do it. So that's the 4 steps. The belief is number 1, then the understanding, the connecting, and then you have the actual experiencing it when you actually get it into your life. And the Eibishter says over here, it could be one of the hardest mitzvahs. It's not a mitzvah to do, put on tefillin, or to, you have to understand this. It's like a mandatory thing. You have to understand this thing. And if you think about it, it's very hard to understand. How could you understand that 2 plus 2 is 7? It doesn't make sense. Although it's not really a contradiction, but it's very strange. And it's a mitzvah. You can't just say it and scream, Havayu Elokim. The Eibishter says in Torah, it's mitzvah d'oraisa. Veyadata, you have to connect to this concept, you have to know well, and it should affect you. You must understand that Havaya hu Elokim. Right? And whoever knows a little bit understands that Havaya and Elokim are really like 2 total opposite powers. Like forget about 2 and 2 like is 7, like it's like not the right answer, but it's not really opposite. Havaya and Elikim is really two opposites. And by the way, again, it could be a harder mitzvah because you have to understand it. You can't just say it and believe, you have to understand it. But besides being a harder mitzvah, and a mitzvah that Eibush tells you to do, it's also the best thing that you would want to have in your life. It's like winning the lottery. If you would know this point, then in a way it's better than winning the lottery. Because the lottery is just money. It's not going to help your health, and also your marriage and your children and a lot of your experiences. If you get this point of Avayu Elikim, it's going to help you through every single challenge you're ever going to have in your life. Right? Because if you understand how challenges work, what's the point, and where does it come from, and how to deal with it, and that is like better than anything else that you ever could have, that you could ever want, because it goes through every single thing in your life. So we're going to go through a few points of the Maimer, and obviously a lot of you learned it before, you're going to learn it afterwards yourself, just to say a few points of the Maimer. So to understand what's the difference between Avaya and Elikim, what's the difference between Avaya and Elikim, what are these two? Obviously there's only one Eibishter. Everyone always gets mixed up with this Maimer. There's just one Eibishter in the Welt, but the way the Eibishter deals with us, there's two forces, there's two powers that he has, that Hashem made. So there's a few ways how to describe the difference between Avaya and Elikim, and if you get the point, it's really all the same point. Number one, the Rebbe says, is, for example, Hesed and Gvura. Havaya would be the midah of Hesed, and Elikim would be Gvura. So what's the difference between Chesed and Gvura? There's a lot of ways, I'm sure you don't know a lot of Chassidus, but in very simple words, someone knocks on your door, and he's asking for tzedakah. Oh, some people get very annoyed whenever someone asks them for tzedakah. You know, it's like a whole, but it's a mitzvah in the Torah, you have to give tzedakah, okay? And by the way, there's a lot of fakers today. You know, it's hard to know. Like you really need how much. Like, give me proof you need money, b'chlal. You know, you want to understand this person really needs to have money or not. That's number one. Number two, and by the way, by Chesed, for example, Chesed is someone that he enjoys giving. Like he wants to give, and he doesn't ask him any questions. He gives right away. That's number one. Number two, there's a second difference between Chesed and Gvura. That also, how much do you give him? Gevura is someone that basically, you need to have money, he finds out, he makes investigations if he needs to have money or not, and then he gives them how much he needs. Chesed would usually give even more than how much the person needs. And by the way, it's really one detail that's defining between these two things, Chesed and Gevura. It's really one point, right? What's the actual difference between Chesed and Gevura? The question is now, who's the main actor here? Who's the main player over here? So by Chesed, it's like, I don't want to use the word taiva, although it is a taiva. But some people, they have in their genes, they enjoy helping other people. And that's why, it's because of the giver, that's why he's giving him the tzedakah that he needs to have. That's why he also gives more. He's giving him based on how much he's able to give on the giver. It's all based on the giver. That's Havai. Elikim, Gvura, is, I don't want to give tzedakah. I'm not in the type of giving out money. If someone needs, first of all, let's see if he needs to have. And also, we'll give him how much he needs to have, which means the main player over here is the recipient. And that's why you're looking at the recipient, he's the main figure over here, and you're giving him how much he's able to receive. So now, regarding the energy we have in this world right now, that we're able to feel this energy that we have in this world, you have the energy that comes from Havaya, which Havaya, I wonder if anyone could feel that level of Havaya. Because that level of Havaya, that is when God gives us and treats us the way He is. Right? And that is obviously unlimited. It's obviously above any limitations and boundaries. And it's not diluted into this world the way the world is able to receive. That's the way the Eibishter is. Which obviously it's above nature. Whatever was, whatever is, whatever's going to be is the same thing. Right? And by the way, I'm sure a lot of people here, they felt a gilui of Shem Havai for sure many times in their life. Any miracle, like Kriyas Yamsuf, if you remember Kriyas Yamsuf, although we were there probably, but that's an expression of Shem Havai, which means it's not based on nature, based on the world. It's all the miracles come from Shem Havai. And whenever someone gets a certain revelation, it could be writing to the Rebbe, you see a likur, so you see Hashgacha Pratis, wow, Rabbi, you know what happened 5 minutes ago? The biggest Hashgacha Pratis ever happened to me in my life. That is all an expression from Shem Havai, when someone feels God the way the Eibishter is. And then you have the regular life. Now you're sitting on the chair, it could be hot, it could be cold, you know, like the fact that the world is getting energy the way the world is, that's Shem Elikim. So Havai is basically Chesed. That's when God's giving us the way He is above nature. Elikim is Gvura when you're looking at the recipient. And the recipient over here is the world. That was the plan. The plan was, so it's a little bit different because over there it's like, there's the giver, the recipient, and then Over here, the Eibishter is making the recipient. He's making the world. And the plan that God made was to make a very low world, a very concealed world, a very natural world, that you don't see Elikus. And based on that, the Eibishter basically diluted the energy all the way down until it goes down to a little person with his little brain and his little body, into a little ant, you know? That the fact that the energy could go all the way down to a little ant and to a rock and to anything in this whole world, that is all because of Shem Elikim. Elikim is the power that basically dilutes and contracts. He's mitzamitzim, that power from Shem Havaya. So although they're working together, but the fact is it's two total opposites. Havaya is bligvul, and it's based on the Eibishter, which is higher than nature, and Elikim is the biggest extreme to the exact opposite. Elikim is a very diluted and mitzumtzim dika energy that goes and all the concealments, and by the way, also all the issues people have. It could be in the family, it could be in seminary, it could be in the flight coming up soon, which means whatever's bothering a person. All these things are all outcomes from Shem Elikim. That's all the concealments that we have. And the Eibishter says, you have to understand that it's really the same thing. Which is very hard because it sounds like it's two opposites. That's one way of learning the differences. There's other difference that the Rebbe says is Oiris and Kalim, which you could use also the example of Oir and Shefa. I'm going to try to go a little bit fast to try to go through the whole Maimer, at least the main point of the Maimer. So you have basically the sun. Baruch Hashem, now it's sunny outside, you get energy from the sun, we get light from the sun. And the truth is that if someone would take a box and put some light into the box, go to her room, there's no electricity in the room, there will be no light in the box. You can never disconnect light from its source. Right? That's one detail we know about the sun. It can never be disconnected from its source. Number two, we know that the sun, you know, leave the way it is. We're speaking about the sun, so it's not we're feeling the light of the sun stronger. So the light of the sun, it can never be disconnected. Number two, that in a certain place in Eretz Yisrael, could be there's someone that could be getting very hot from the sun, could be dehydrating from the sun, it could be people could even leave the world, right? It's a kid that's left in the car. The light of the sun, it could be causing damage. And in other places of the world, it could be causing that the wheat is growing from, could be someone's going to be getting vitamin D. Which means that the sunlight the sun doesn't care less what happens with the sunlight. The sun doesn't also gain or lose if the sunlight is giving energy, not giving, even if there's no energy at all, even if there's clouds that are blocking the energy, doesn't affect the sun in any way. Number three, the sun does not need to work hard to give out the energy. It's just Malayim Ziv Umafikim Noiga. It's full of light, and that's why it goes out automatically. And the other example we always give is the example of a teacher. That a teacher is teaching to a student, hopefully it's a good teacher, hopefully it's a good student, and the student is going to leave the seminary. And the question is, what the teacher taught to the student is going to also disappear, or it's going to stay in the head of the student? Like the sunlight, that once it's disconnected, there's no more light anymore. Obviously, by the teacher, the main point is that you teach to the student, and it stays in the person's head. And when you leave the room, it's supposed to be disconnected. It's very opposite. You think about all the examples, it's very opposite. And the second thing, the teacher has to work very hard to teach. It's not a simple thing. You have to put the words in a certain way for the student to understand. He has to work hard. And the third thing is that this teacher obviously does gain or lose. Right? I don't know if you can say these words, but you could maybe say these words. That you don't really understand anything until you actually teach it. Which means when you teach something, that's when you actually get it better. The teacher does gain from it. And the main difference between the son and the teacher is that the son is that's his nature to give out light. That's why he's giving it the way he is. And that's why he's the only existence here. That's why he can never be disconnected. And that's why he doesn't have to work hard. And that's why he doesn't gain or lose, because it's all about him. That's why he's giving the way he is. And the teacher, the main player in the room, is the student. Like just like Chesed and Gevurah. That Chesed, the main thing is the giver, and Gevurah, the main thing is the recipient. Also between the son and the teacher, by the son, the main thing is the giver, the son. That's Havaya, where Abish is giving the way he is. And God obviously doesn't have to work hard to make a world. God doesn't gain or lose. Right? That's why we give the example of, Chassidus always use the example of Oiris. And Elikim would be like the teacher, which is trying to look at the student, which is the world, and trying to dilute the energy, that it should be a different energy than the way he understands it, because the kid won't get the way he understands it. And that's why he has to work hard, and that's why it's supposed to be. That's why he's able to be disconnected, because it's something else. So the question is, how could you say that Havaya Elikim is the same thing if it's very, very opposite? The Rebbe just, by the way, says a small point that Elikim, which is all the concealments and all the Kalim come from Shem Elikim. the truth is you do see some sort of gilui also in Shem Elikim, right? For example, the Rebbe says that we just said a few minutes ago that the actual power of vision that a person has comes from his soul, right? And today it's already proven. People that went through near-death experiences, people were able to see even though their eyes were closed, right? But the fact is the spiritual power of vision goes into your eyeball, and now you're able to see. So the fact is that the energy, which is the oyer, havaya, goes into the physical little eyeball, and now it's able to see. That's the keli, that's Shem Elikim, and now it's able to see. So Elikim, why are you saying it's concealing? It's really revealing the power of vision, and the power of hearing, the power of understanding, the power of emotions. There goes to all different examples in the next page. And the Rebbe says, you're right, obviously there is some sort of revelation that comes out of the eyes, but that's not called the real revelation, which means the real power of vision, we're basically not able, we're maybe able to see less than 1% of what's happening in this room right now. You can't see neshamas, you can't even see the words that I'm telling you. You can't see logic, you can't see anything. You just see 1%. Which means you're right that the eyes do reveal, but it's basically, it's more concealing than revealing, first of all. And even when it does reveal, it's only through the concealment that you're able to see something. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to see anything. And then it goes through a long arichis explaining that you have a musig of a certain gilui coming out of Shem Elikim, but the truth is the main job description from Shem Elikim is really to conceal. And although you do see something by the end of the day, but it's still mostly concealing, and even more, the Rebbe says, it's only through the concealments that you're able to get something. Which that's like the part of the mind where people have a hard time understanding, that as if the only way to really get anywhere in life is really through the concealments, really through the blockages. That's what takes out our real powers. Right? Everyone knows that whoever's holding any darganah, wherever you grew a lot from things that you learned and what you did, but we grew much more from those times than we thought we were stuck and we went through some sort of challenge. We obviously got much more giluyim there. The Rebbe gives an example also when someone's talking. I'm trying now to give over a certain point to you. There's some sort of intellect concept that I have in my head. I'm trying to transfer that to you, and God made the vehicle that's called words. Speech, that's the vehicle that we use to transfer information. So obviously, I am thinking of that concept and putting it into words. The actual physical words are obviously concealing over what I'm saying. It's going into those words, and when you are listening to what I'm saying, you're getting some sort of idea what I'm trying to tell you. And if you have a good head, you could take out of those words what I'm trying to say. But the actual words is not the actual intellect. I'm sure everyone experienced many times in life when they have something, they're trying to say to someone, and the guy doesn't know what you're talking about. And even though he knows all the words that you're saying, but the word itself is not the seichel. Otherwise, why can't a 10-year-old kid, he knows how to speak English, why can't he understand all the taste? Why can't he understand everything you're telling him? Because the words itself is garnished. By the way, that's how God made the world. That was through Dibur. That's Shem Elikim. That is what God did. God spoke and the world came. What does it mean he spoke? It means that it was concealed. Shem Elikim concealed over the real energy, and a little bit of energy goes to that what ended up going to the world. So the basic question we're holding now is that Havaya and Elikim are two separate, not only separate, also opposite forces. One is revealing, one is giving the way the Eibush says, one's higher than Teva, Beligvul, and one is Tachlis at Simsum, Hester, concealments and constructions, and Teva. That's why Teva is also Gematria Shem Elikim. So the Rebbe says the answer in one word, in one line. It's really one explains a little bit, but then the whole time is explaining the answer well. But first, a lot of times you can't understand something before you know it. That's the problem people have while they're trying to understand what you're saying. First of all, get the point, get the one-liner, and then you could develop that point and develop it, and that's the chokhmah, and you can't skip chokhmah. So the Rebbe says an example of someone that's trying to understand a certain concept. By the way, everyone here has that power, right? The understanding, which means the power of revealing, the power of intellect that we have. And you get an idea. It doesn't have to be, by the way, you made up the idea. It could be also an idea that you heard from someone, that you have a certain idea. And it's interesting that that idea that you have, the same brain that understood that idea, also understands right away that it applies over here, it doesn't apply over there, doesn't apply, which means every single logic that there is in the world has to have its limitations. You know? It could be, if it's two Eidim are believed, it could be Migu, it could be Chazakeh, Because there's a lot of times, but obviously in this case you can't trust it, right? Everyone has always the exceptions of the rule, but the vart is that limitation, that's like chesed and gvura, the power of understanding the concept and the understanding that it's only applying the limitations, the boundaries that every single logic has. And those two powers come from the same place. It comes from your brain. And since it comes from your brain, it's impossible that it's really, really concealing over the other power. That is the point of the answer. That it's impossible for something to cover over itself. The definition of covering means that there's something else covering over you. The example that the Rebbe gives is like from a yarmulke. If a yarmulke falls off, you put your hand, it's not going to be helping you for a yarmulke. Someone else's hand would work, which means the hand is a good covering. But your hand cannot be a good covering because you cannot cover over yourself. Someone's going to come to the room, you want to hide, so you're going to go and you're going to hide like that. It doesn't help. Under a table, it's considered hiding. If it's something else, it's considered hiding. But ein etzem master al etzem, which means it's impossible for something to cover over. That's the way God made the world. And that's the way it's also upstairs. Havaya lekim is both powers of the Eibishter, the same Eibishter. So it's impossible that there is really any concealment. It's impossible that there is something holding you back. Because it's part of God Himself, and God, Havaya Elikim Kul Ahad, and therefore, it's impossible that Elikim is covering over Havaya. Ein etzem master al etzem. I always say this word, it's just so funny. How people always, Chiddush always says, that the highest power of a person getting information is when you see something. If you see that it's day now, I'm going to prove to you 1,000% that it's night. Your seeing is stronger than that, right? When you see something, it's the strongest proof. But Chiddush does the opposite. Chiddush is basically telling you that everyone here sees concealment. Everyone has challenges in life. Everyone has these things that are blocking them. Now the Rebbe is going to explain logically that everyone here in this room could understand. It's not going to be a problem to understand it. The problem is going to be more our issue is going to be more in inhaling it and installing it into and living our life that way. But the understanding part, everyone's able to get right away. And it's going to be crazy because we're going to see concealments. And we're going to actually know that it's really there's really no concealment. It's like proving what you see is totally the opposite. It's unbelievable what Rebbe does.
Why use words to create?
Because words mean that you are concealing over the real energy, the unlimitedness from the energy. That's concealed. The Havaya part is being concealed. And you're revealing just a diluted level which the world is able to receive. That's why it's Bereshis Bara Elikim, which means God created the world through Shem Elikim. Because mitzad Havaya, the world will never happen. This world we have now, Tachtoinim, a physical world that's full of concealment you don't see. This table is basically telling me that I'm existing by myself. The whole world is lying to you the whole time. Everyone thinks everything looks as if it's independent, right? That's from Shem Elikim. That's what God wanted to happen. And only through Shem Elikim that can happen. Mitzad Shem Havaya, you would see the way God is running, like you would see God in everything in this world, right? And that is actually the truth, that there is God, and our job, the whole Chassidus Chabad, the whole world, the whole is what? When we actually understand, and we're able to see, with our brain at least, the Mashiach we're going to see it, Begashmi, is that really it's all Elokus. So that's why the words is the concealment that allowed this world to come.
What does it mean that the sun never disconnects from its source?
The light of the sun could never be disconnected. If I would take a box, have sunlight in the box, I would go to the room, open up the box, there'll be no light in the box. The light is why? Why? Because it's part of the sun. It's not something else from the sun. Like the teacher's teaching the concept is something else from the teacher. He's giving something else over to it. It's something that's based on the student. The example they give is like a mirror, right? If someone's looking at a mirror and then you leave, the other guy's gonna leave also. Why? Because it's not something else. That's a reflection from you. So Havaya is basically that. Havaya is the energy of God, which is basically part of the Eibishter. And that's part of that's why it's also Ein Sof, like the Eibishter is. So the example the Rebbe gives is about a Yid. He doesn't say this example in the words of the Rebbe, just as a holy man, but I'm going to give an example of a person that was living in Tzfas, Yer HaKodesh. Right? 500 years ago, there was a holy Jew in Tzfas. He was here for a year and a half, and I don't want to say, I don't know if I can say these words, that the one that had the most power on the whole world just for a few months. No one knew who he was. He was in Tzfas for a year and a half, and he changed the whole world. This is the Arizal. He passed away at the age of 36, 37, and he managed to change the whole, whatever he does, everyone, the Arizal did that, that's like 100, that's like Elio, that's like the top. So the Heilige Arizal was in Sfas HaKodesh. A lot of Chaver came to the Arizal. Who else came? Reb Chaim Vital was the main student of the Arizal, but a lot of Chaver came to him. And the Arizal started bringing down Kabbalah and Chassidus, the beginning of Chassidus, down to very simple words, down to the world to understand. Which is the mission impossible. There's no way you could do it. Like, the things you can't see, you can't live. The Arizal was trying to explain to the Chaver what Malchus da Atzilus is. And people are looking to, they can't understand. The Rebbe says a teacher and a student. That's what the Rebbe says in the Maamar. But not a regular teacher and student like now. It's a real teacher and a real student, which means not that that's just telling you information that you could have gotten by yourself. He's giving you over information that it's impossible for you to get it by yourself. It's a real teacher that's be'ein aroich. The Arizal, which saw Atzilus, he was more bucky in the streets of Atzilus more than the streets of Tzfas. He also had a hard time with all the short in Tzfas. He didn't know Tzfas too well, but he knew Atzilus. Which means that the Arizal now is giving over Malchus da Atzilus to people that never saw, never, how you can explain to him such a thing? So obviously the teacher has to put it down in simple words, it should go all the way down to the level of the student, but it's still, however low you're going to go, it's never going to go into his head, because he doesn't understand what it is, because he never saw it. Okay, right away he gives an example. Outside you have earth outside, you put seeds, it's able to grow things out of the earth. You have apple trees, orange trees. He starts giving a mushal. He goes over, a real teacher goes over to the students, he goes over to his perspective, to his world, and he starts he's speaking to him in his language. And he says, something called ground? Yeah, he knows what earth is. He knows what's growing. He sees things that are growing. Everything can grow out of the ground, right? Everything comes out of the ground. It's round, it's thick. He says, Malchus da Atzilus is basically that also. Malchus da Atzilus is something which everything, Malchus everything comes from Malchus da Atzilus. Right? And he explains how it's round, thick, in a more spiritual sense. And a lot of times the student starts to lose it a little bit over there. But at least he gets a certain point. You give him a mashal, and through that mashal, the actual mashal is really concealing over the concept. Right? If someone would just come into the room right now and hear what's the guy's talking about? Orange trees, apple trees? Like, what in the world is Veyadata Muska? Looking at the mashal by itself, the mashal is a concealment on the intellect that the person wants to give over. And the truth is also the student knows that this is certain concealment, right? Why in the world would you bring down concealments for? That's the biggest question everyone has for so many years. What's the point of concealments? Well, in this story, everyone understands why you need a concealment. Because if the teacher would just tell him Malchus da Atzilus and tell him the way it is by itself, the way he understands it, the student won't get anything. Even what he would be able to understand, if you don't put it down in his words, you don't give him the mashal, he won't get even that 1%, he wouldn't get either. So the mashal is really crucial for the kid to get something, for the student to get something. So the Rebbe we put it to the mind, we put it into 3 steps. You have over here the teacher in the room.
That's only once you're already dealing with the tachtim. But you want to try
in the example of the teacher and the student, there is the guy there already. Very good. I was at the point before. I said it also before. There's a little bit of a difference. There's like 3 things in the story. There's the teacher, the student, and what he's giving over. By the Eibishter, there was no student. There was no world yet. But God had the world He wanted to make, and in that world He wanted to make, it had to be very, very diluted energy. We're going to get to the nimshal in a second, by the way. I want to first speak about the mashal, and then we're going to go to the nimshal.
Who said that concealment's a mashal?
Who says? So first of all, I'm saying it says it in the Maamar, right? But beside that, it says it there because that will be just believing what the Rebbe says, right? But you understand that the mashal, you think everyone's like, I was wondering, mashal for sure. It just helps you explain the concept. It's like a very strong gilui. You're right that there is a gilui that comes out of the mashal, but the mashal is taking a very high concept, Malchus da Atzilus, putting it down to a piece of earth, into an apple tree, or orange tree, which that is something alien, you would think, to the actual concept. It's something else which is covering over. It's like a garment, the Rebbe says. It's like you can't grasp, you can't connect to this concept which is so abstract. It's very, to understand the raw logic is very hard. After you learn a lot of Chassidus, you can understand like raw logic by itself. But every single logic that there is in Torah or anywhere, there is the actual logic by itself. And by the way, your goal is every single concept you ever learn is to get the actual logic, not only the story that it tells you. Because that's the biggest mistake everyone always makes. The guy goes into the sukkah, makes a bracha, lisha b'sukkah, then he goes on back into the house. Does he have to make a bracha again or not? It's machlokes, you make a bracha. So it says the halacha is 2 hours, 3 hours you can make a bracha again. Yeah. Then it says, by the way, someone's wearing tefillin, you take it off, you go to the bathroom, whatever. Do you make a bracha again or not? Someone says, what's the connection? Sukkah to tefillin. If you get the logic, it's the same exact argument. Because the point is not tefillin, sukkah. That's not the point. The point is when someone's doing a certain concept and you left the concept, is that considered leaving all the way or not? And that concept could be in 20 or 30 or 40 places in Shas, but it's the same exact logic. Till the Gemara is going to say, why are you saying the same thing again? What do you again? You spoke about sukkah and now it's about tefillin. It's the same exact thing. But he's going to say why it's really different. But your job is every logic is the story that it tells you is like a certain garment, a certain concealment on it. That's, by the way, Havai Elikim. But let's go a little bit slowly. The teacher is trying to give Malchus Datzilus to the Chevre, and it's not going. It's not going, so he puts it down in different words. He finds the marshal of the earth. By the way, for the teacher himself, there's no concealment. Which is what you're saying is really true. The teacher. Why, by the way, for the teacher, there's no concealment?
Because he is the law. Because he understands it all. He made the muscle. Because he sees through it.
Listen. Everyone's going to say, who cares about the teacher? Because they were a student. No, listen carefully to this word. Listen, it's not for the teacher, there's no concealment. That's not the word. The word is like this now. You have to say those words to get the point. But the way you say the point is that for the teacher, there's no concealment. Why? Because do you know what a mashal is? What's a real mashal? What's a real mashal? Not the mashal you give an example, like A real mashal means you have to know the concept very, very. If you want to give a mashal, you have to have 3 things in your head. Number 1, you have to know the concept very, very well. You have to know the garment, the mashal, very well, and you also have to know how the mashal came from the nimshal. The earth outside is Malchus Da'atzilis on a lower level. It's not just giving you an example from the earth. If it was just an example, it would be a real concealment. If it's something else than the concept, then it will be a concealment. Because the whole answer is that the only answer is for the teacher, the Elika Arizal. He went to Malchus Da'atzilis and he went all the way down. Goes Malchus to Yitzir to Asi until it came to the earth. And the Arizal saw in the earth how that is Malchus Da'atzilis. And since that's Malchus Da'atzilis, it can't be that it's a concealment because it's the same thing. So it's not that the teacher is talking and giving a mashal and the teacher knows the nimshal. He's giving a mashal, but it's not because he knows. No, when he's talking, giving lower words, he sees it in those words. And when he uses this example, he sees in the mashal the way it's Malchus Da'atzilis. And therefore, not for the teacher. The truth is that it's not a concealment. The teacher just knows how it's one. And since he knows that it's one, so that's why he sees that it's not a concealment.
Once the student understands it, so not
let's get the teacher straight. Although, you know why? Because when you know that by the teacher, it's not a concealment, so you know that also by you it's not a concealment. That's the whole word. Because who cares about the teacher when it's a student? No. When you understand why it's not a concealment for the teacher, so then you understand why it's really not a concealment. But the student, he sees the mashal and the concept of 2 things. Since for you it's 2 things, that's why it's a concealment, right? If it's something else, it's going to be concealing. If it's the same thing, then it's not concealing. That's the whole point. So the student, ema lasot, you can't just tell him the raw information by itself, he won't get nothing. So the only way for this concept to go into his head is only through a funnel. The only way to get this energy, this thing into this thing is only through a mashal. It's 2 things. Again, I'm saying it's very general, but there's obviously a lot of details in the Rebbe's Maimer that you put it into lower words, tzimtzum. But even that won't work. You have to have the second. You have to have the parso. You have to have the mashal. And it's something which is like a concealment. But if you wouldn't have that concealment, then it would be a real concealment. You wouldn't be getting anything. So the first step is for the teacher, there's no concealment at all. It's just gilui. The second step is that for the student, it is some sort of concealment. He doesn't get the real point. The student does not get the information. He doesn't know what Malchus Datzilis is. He knows what the ground is, and he gets the idea of Malchus Datzilis, that everything comes from Malchus Datzilis, and he gets 2% of the concept, thanks to the mashal. So at least the mashal is a good guy. In the second step, we make the concealment. At least, that's the only way to get the information, is only to the mashal. Not only is he a good guy, he's also being megala to you something. The whole goal of the mashal is just to get you to get that knowledge. He's the best thing over here, the mashal. But it's still a concealment. And the third step is.
Can you repeat that in short again?
Yeah, go in order, please.
So the first one is?
The first step is the perspective of the teacher. Which the perspective of the teacher, if you go to the teacher's head, there's no concealment at all. And that's not only that's the teacher's perspective, that's the truth. Because I'm going to ask you now, is it a concealment or not? You tell me it depends. Beside the teacher, there's no concealment. Beside the student, it is a concealment. But the truth, is it a concealment or not?
No.
The fact for the teacher it's not a concealment means that's the actual fact. The student didn't get there yet. Doesn't get it yet. But the first step is the perspective of the teacher, which is the emes, that the mashal and the nimshal is really one thing. It's all one. And also the fact that he had the power to give it over to smaller, to dilute the words, put it all the way down, comes from the same brain that has the power to reveal. So it can't be that it's concealing and it's actually being mitzamtzim. Because you cannot be mitzamtzim over yourself. You can't conceal over yourself. So the teacher has the power of giving information and also putting it into certain words, but it's not an alien power, it's the same power of speaking. And that's why it's not a real concealment, because it's all the same thing. And the mashal, even the mashal, which is something that looks totally different, is the earth. But the earth is really coming from Malchus Datil. It's really the same thing. That's why for the teacher, step number one is that there's no concealment at all from the perspective of the teacher.
Could you say that the student is the concealment? Because it's only from the perspective of the student, only in their minds.
Which means it's hard to say these words, but it's like an illusion. For the student, but for the student, it is. It was just now in Tanya these things, by the way. For the student, we live. It's two separate things. The earth is explaining Malchus Datzilis. Okay, so you only get that point because it's two separate things. But that's the way. That's the only way to get to the step 3. You have to have that step. There's a conceal. So step number 2. Let's just say step number 2. The student. The step number 2 is going to the perspective of the student. He hears the earth, the apple trees, the orange trees, and he understands through that. He understands the Malchus Datzilis. So there is a concealment in step number 2, which means the student does not get the whole point. This mashal is covering up. It's concealing over 80. The actual Malchus he doesn't even get. It's a very big concealment in step number 2. 90% of the concept is no Malchus. He understands a point thanks to the mashal, which means this is a concealment, but the goal is not to conceal. The whole goal is for you to get something. If not for that, you wouldn't be getting anything. It would have been a bigger concealment. The ultimate revelation would have been the biggest concealment. If you would just tell him everything the way Malchus Datzilis is, he wouldn't be getting anything. So when you reveal, like looking at the sun, if it's just a revelation, you can't see nothing. If it was just a revelation, it will be the biggest concealment. When you conceal, that's when you put sunglasses, you get the tzimtzum, a little less sunlight, then you can see.
What's
So-
the points to see?
Because the whole reason why we're here is to make dira b'tachtonim, is to see the elokus in it. So step number 2 is that it's a concealment, but it's not but the goal is not to conceal, and it's actually revealing.
That's from the student's perspective?
Yeah. Step number 2 and 3 is the student. We are the. So step number 3. Yeah. Step number 3 is that he has a concealment, which is the mashal, and he has all the words that the teacher told him, all these like diluted words. He gets what he gets, which is compact, by the way. The teacher put it into a few lines and a few points, and he gets those points. But a real teacher doesn't just tell the student some points of the intellect. The teacher has to be a real teacher, a professional teacher. He has to give over every single detail of the Tosfos, every single detail in the concept to the student. But the student doesn't even realize that there was so much information in that word that the teacher told him. Sometimes it's just like few words. It could be a Mishnah, for example. It's a few words, but in the Mishnah, you have the whole Gemara is 20 pages on one Mishnah. Because in the Mishnah, a letter here, a letter there, and at least a little kid learns Mishnayos. A 5-year-old kid, 10-year-old kid learns the Mishnah. And when you get older, when you grow up, you see that how much information there was in those words. You're also in seminary. You learned a lot in seminary now. You don't even know how much you learned in seminary. But one day you're going to leave, and it's going to start clicking. Like you're going to be mind-bogged how much you learned. Because now, it's every person is like that. That's the way it works. So step number 3, not a klutz that he thinks that he got the point and he goes further. No, he knows that he got the point, and now he's able to start getting the point. So this bacher sits down. Could be a girl also, it could be anyone, right? And this person sits down, and the example is always like a funny example to use, but it's a real thing. But the example is 40 years that you are learning about the earth outside, and you're understanding the earth, and you understand every word that Rebbe said again and again and again, and every time you see more details, by the way. Every time you look at Sikha, I already know that Sikha. You do this mind. You learn it again. Every time you learn the Maamar, you get much more details, much more, and then after a lot of times, you start after 100 times, you start getting what's going on over there. But if you really work on yourself, the student is able to understand how the mashal is so exact to the nimshal, and is able to end up getting the nimshal 100%, understanding how the mashal, the nimshal is really one, and he's going to see that there was no concealment at all. He's going to get to the same level as the teacher.
This is only from Michelle, not like by Torah, or really.
It's a real mashal, but that Chassidus gives, Torah gives. Not like, it says that Rameir gave Shlomo gave 1,000 mashalim, right? So everyone's like, he gives you 5,000 mashalim. No, you said it on such a high level that in order to go all the way down, you have to give you 1,000 mashalim. It's like a real mashal means that it's coming from, like, I don't know if the word is Michel. It's coming from there. You have to develop the level all the way down.
What does it mean that you could get there? What do you get? Like,
Every time you see more and more and more, until talking about the third step. The third step is when you toil and understand, you work on every letter, every word, the order that he was saying and why he was saying it. And all of a sudden you start getting the real information that was in those words. Because the actual words is just 2%. But what's in those words is so much information. You get it until you see the way the mashal and nimshal is really one, until you're able to see, and then you understand that there's no concealment at all. And you understand Malchus Datzilis by itself. Through the earth. By the teacher was through Malchus Datzilis, through the earth. But that's backwards. The way we got there is different. But the point by the end of the day is there's no concealment at all.
Isn't the fact that you get it proof that it's not it?
Huh?
The fact that you get it proof that it's not it.
how can you ever get there? There's always.
We said if that.
Okay, so we have to see the nimshal. We would have to get to. By the way, this was just the mashal. By the way.
Yeah, it's the whole muscle of that Rizal.
I know, but even that, this whole thing is just a mashal. There's a really very good. It's one mashal. Let's get to the point now. The Eibishter one day decided to make a world.
This is the nimshal now.
No, I think you're gonna get the point by the nimshal, with the point that I was trying to say. In the story of the Arizal, Rabbi Chaim Vital, and they don't understand what Malchus Datzilis is. They ended up getting to. You're right. There's always more to learn, but those concepts that the teacher gave over to them through Mishalim, after many years, the students worked on those words. They were able to get the actual point. By the way, forget about that. Even a regular simple word. You hear here. A teacher tells you something. You hear what he's saying, and you get it after. You're right. There's no limit. You can always get more and more and more.
So how is Havaya really wrong with that?
So let's get to the point of the Maimer. Okay, Chevre. The Eibishter decided to make a world one day. Yeah. But it's the same thing as the Mashal. It's all one. If you think it's separate, so then.
You said before and you didn't explain, but what's the Tzimtzum and what's Parsa? What does Tzimtzum mean versus?
Yeah, there's a lot of details that we're going through. Mamish, just a few points of the Maimer. But you just know that there's two types of Tzimtzum. One Tzimtzum, you're asking the question. You have, for example, there's like a massive window. You have a lot of light. Outside, there's a lot of light of the sun. And when there's a window, less light, but there's a lot of light also. A smaller window, you only have a little bit of light. A hole, a tiny bit of light, but it's the same light. Tzimtzum is the same exact energy, it's just making it less. It's just in quantity. And then you have the stronger level of Tzimtzum, which is much tougher. The Parsa, which is the curtain. The curtain not only makes the light less, it also changes the light. Which means, however much you're going to be mitzamtzem and saif, it can never go into oilamus. Oilamus are totally limited. Every world is limited. And you can never have unlimited, unlimited. You can't even have a big elephant in a small hole, which means even big and small can't fit. So you can have unlimited energy which is unlimited into a limited world. So you have to have parsa. Parsa is also what changes the energy and makes it into a more, to be able to suit that world. It's a side, and when the story over here, it's when you put the words in simple words, that's tzimtzum, and you give a mashal, that's the parsa. Stronger level of tzimtzum when it actually, like you take something else which blocks it, and then you have a different type of energy which comes out from the other side. So it's a big concept, but I want to go to the point of the Maimer over here. So the Eibishter decided one day to make a world. All the reasons why he wanted to make a world, everyone knows the whole machlokes, all the different reasons, it's all true. But the ultimate reason was to make dira b'tachtonim. Okay, so you have to have tachtonim. You can't have a dira. So the Eibishter, which means, again, these words, it's hard to say these words because it sounds like, but the way the Eibishter made it was that Shem Havaya cannot make the world. Havaya is the way the Eibishter is. That's not tachtonim, which means it'll be just Elyonim. Hashem Havai is unlimited, it's just a likus, and that's why the physical world, the way it is now, wouldn't be coming from Shem Havai. Right? And the Eibishter wanted to make the world the way it is now. So you have to have now Shem Elikim. Elikim takes the energy of Shem Havai, and it makes it diluted and mitzamtzem thousands of thousands until it comes to the Atzilus, the Bri, Yitzir, Asiyah, comes into the world, comes to us, the animals, the ants, to every speck of dust in the world. Which means the differences between everything in this world comes from Shem Elikim. All the blocking, all the concealments, all the tzimtzum, everything comes from Shem Elikim. But that's the way the world came about, right? Now there's 3 steps, right? Number 1.
Elikim takes a vaya to create the world.
Yeah. Havai is the actual energy that's making the world. That's the actual sun. Again, I'm giving you a muscle, right? The sun. Then you have the ozone layer. You have the layer around the sun, which is making the light eligible to be fit into this world. So the Shemesh Havai, it's a pasuk in Tehillim, right? Shemesh Havai Mogin Elikim, something like that. You have the sun. Remember yesterday Shabbos Nevarchim, you said Tehillim? You remember that pasuk? You're already in a different island then. But you have Havai Elikim is the sun and the layer which is making the energy to fit into this world. So Shem Elikim takes the energy of Havaya, which is beligvul, and makes as big magbel that energy. Mitzamtze, malumast, all the concealments, all the issues we have today comes from Shem Elikim. Number 1. We're here today, Chevre. Number 1. Mitzad the Eibishter.
Someone has a question. How does this part fit with the Berach of Love and Tanya, that like almost Kas and almost Galia are 2 parts of Shem Havaya?
Very good. It's other things. I don't want to get into this thing now, but the Rebbe speaks about it over there. You have the Oris and Tanya. There is chassidus that explains that part. But even over there, you just know, even over there, the ultimate is all that's all the same power. So you have the Eibishter himself. The Eibishter himself, there's no tzimtzum, there's no hamas v'asteirim, which means there's no such thing. The Eibishter, the big deal. What do I care about the Eibishter? Everyone asks, what's the point of this word? The Eibishter sees the lekus of the ganze Welt. The question is, why does the Eibishter see it that way? Because not that's the way God sees it. That's not the word. Because that's the emes. Havai Elikim is one. Havai Elikim is one, which means that all the tzimtzum, the hamas v'asteirim that there are, it is part of God, which means that it can't be that it's really real. God sees how the mashal is one with the nimshal. God sees the way Havai Elikim kol echad, and therefore, for God, there's no tzimtzumim. How the Eibishter knows. The Eibishter sees in the physical world, through Shem Elikim, he sees the way Shem Elikim is one with Havaya, and that's why there's no Helm Hester. But God is pleading to us to get the point also. Which means not that God is like that, and no, the whole goal, this is a mitzvah min Torah, by the way, it's not a b'sach chiddush avart, that there's a mitzvah min Torah that you are supposed to get this point also. That the Eibishter is all one, because that's the emes.
What mitzvah?
That Havai Elikim is really one, which means that there's no real concealments. That's the mitzvah. It says in Torah. Number 2. Step number 2 is that also for the world itself, the whole Shem Elikim story, all the concealments, is not trying to take away the energy. It's not trying to take away the world. All the concealments and all this is just in order for it to be a world. There wouldn't be a world if there was no tzimtzumim. There would be no the student wouldn't be getting anything if there was no mashal, there was no tzimtzum v'stadium. Which means that the best thing in the world, the best thing, it's hard to say these words, but the best thing was the mashal. The best thing was the tzimtzum. The best thing, it's the only way in the world we could have got the world. That wouldn't even be a world. But the only way for anything to happen is just through the tzimtzum, hanel, and hester, which means that it's a good thing, which means we can understand that the only way the world was able to, we're existing only through this tzimtzum and hanel and hester. Right? If there was no tzimtzum and hanel and hester, we wouldn't be here.
Then how could it be that Hashem sees by Hashem the light is the way it is through Elikim, but he sees that through Levi, but that.
That's step number 3. Step number 3, which means you have to get this point well. The step number 2 is that there is some sort of, because we see Havaya Elikim, we live our lives as 2 separate things.
Why do we call concealment? It's not.
Because this mashal, so that's always the. I remember it's funny. I had once this question. When I was in the oil asking Zalman Gopin this question, because you learn this. So there's no concealments, but it can't be that if there was no concealments, then you can't say that there's no concealments. The concealments aren't concealments. The concealments aren't real concealments. I think that was, I don't know if I remember the word that he said exactly, but in step number 2 there are concealments, and by the way, step number 2 but at least we're alive.
You said by step number 1 there also is concealment.
Step number 1 is God's perspective. So that is the MS, that there is no concealments at all. That is our goal, to get there also. Which means that the reality. So I'm asking you a question: is the mashal a concealment or not?
It depends for who. Depends for who.
The teacher understands it's not
Essentially, yes.
It looks like a certain concealment, but your whole job, your goal is to reveal that it's not a concealment.
The teacher must know it's a concealment. That's the whole reason he's giving it to him.
It's an illusion.
Is a funnel making you have a lot of wine, you want to put it inside. Is the funnel making it less or not?
No.
It's going slow.
What?
Is it making it less? So if you look at the funnel, it's coming less and less and less and less. If you go out a little bit, you look a little bit further, you see, what are you joking? If it would be no funnel, there would be nothing left in the bottle. It'll spill on the side. So if you look at it for itself, it could look like it's a concealment, which means there is a funnel. There is Shem Elikim. There is this tzimtzum. But the truth is, it's just in order for everything to go through, just for the world.
Hashem understands that there's the concealment, but he understands the concealment is not a concealment.
Yeah. There is Havaya and Elikim. If it was just one thing, it wouldn't be Havaya Elikim Kulahad. Havaya Elikim is 2 powers coming from the same place. But there is Chesed, there is Gvura. Right? You always have to understand that if it's saying that Chesed and Gvura is the same, Havaya Elikim is the same thing, it means that it comes from the same place. Your hand and your head is 2 different things. It's the same person. But it's the same etzem, but it's still 2 different powers, right? So you have now step number 2 is the world came about, the fact that there's and also we do feel a little bit of the energy. You don't know that it's God, but you could feel that you're breathing. You could feel this energy of God in the world. That is the 2% that we got in the second step. That's the idea that the student gets from the mashal. We have that also. That part you could get right away. That part everyone should get right away. That you're able to feel the energy that you have. That is the avai that comes through Shem Elikim in step number 2. But your job, our main job, is to learn chassidus and to work on ourselves, and also take away, by the end of the day, every time you eat food, you're basically, and you think about the taste of the food, and you're looking at how it looks, you're basically making a Havaya Elikim separate. Because everything is a Havaya Elikim. You have in the food, you have the actual energy that's in it. We can't live off that, so God put it into a wrapper, into some sort of sandwich, and we eat it, we get the energy through the sandwich. What's the main thing over here? You think it's 2 separate things, and you're looking and you're thinking and you're just indulging in the taste. That's called you're separating Havaya and Elikim. You're living your life only Shem Elikim. Your goal is to understand well and to live your life in a way when you understand that it's really all one. It's really Havaya Elikim. It's really all one, which means that it cannot be that it's really concealing over Havaya. It's really just the way for you to get the energy is only through that sandwich, which means that it's really one, and the whole goal, the real energy, is really Havaya. Elikim is just the method that that's just a wrapper for you in order for you to get it. But it's not a wrapper. It's made out of food also. It's not something else. It's the same thing. And when someone does that, when you actually eat that sandwich and you think about Havaya, you think about the energy which is in it, you're going to start living a life which is higher than nature. Because this whole thing of nature is really from Shem Elikim. Which means the fact that there's something called nature, and sometimes nature you think it's bothering you and it's disturbing you, it's only because you think that it's a thing for itself. When you understand that there's no reality actually to Shem Elikim by itself, it's not a thing for itself, it's just bringing down Havaya down to this world. His job is just to reveal. So in step number 3, it's when someone realizes that it's Havaya Elikim Kul Echad and there's no concealments at all. The ultimate will be when Mashiach is going to come. That is Mashiach. That is the B'tachtonim, when you just see godless in this world. But it's not just going to happen one day, Mashiach is going to come. No, every single person in this room right now, every single person every second is bringing Mashiach in a certain level, higher and higher and higher, which means you're bringing Elokus down to this world, deeper and deeper and deeper. And the only way it's going to work, it's always the hard part of the Maamar, is that God sees that you're, Baruch Hashem, doing very well. He wants to bring you to the next level. So the only way to go to the next level is when someone has a flight in 3 days from now. And it's very hard to focus because Iran might just start shooting and all of a sudden it's not going to happen. And I live myself through all these things, you know?
Don't say the word.
No, I want you to get the vort. And mitzad shem, which means you have this challenge. You have this, this to be the biggest instance we should have, right? It's just, you just know that the point is not that Iran, it's not the point. The point is that there's something that's like bothering you, some issue that we have. It could be someone doesn't feel well in the family, it could be something in the house, it could be whatever it is, any issue that we have. And that thing comes from Shem Elikim. Right? Elikim is making that concealment, that issue that we have comes from Shem Elikim. But there's no such thing as Shem Elikim by itself. There's something very, very precious and amazing in that package. God's giving you the best present. It's a very big gilui of Shem Havaya. But the only way you could have any grip on that level is only through Elikim, which means only through some sort of challenge. And when you just continue learning, like you're doing right now, and you're not being spoiled, it could be a war, it could be whatever it is, I'm learning veyadata, which means you are revealing that this concealment is not a real concealment. And it's not true, and actually you're doing it right now. And that's our whole life, is to break all these concealments. And when you break that concealment, you have a gilui of Havaya. And you're going to see yourself, you're going to be on a higher level. The way you are now is not the way you were in the beginning of the year. But the Eibishter just wants to uplift the person. And the way to uplift, the only way for a student to get only through a mashal, which means the only way that someone, and by the way, if you get the point, so in a second the challenge is going to break, it's going to be nothing. It's take garnished. It's take garnished. It's not a real thing. It's really the stress of Iran. It's something that you can't learn because of that. No, it's not true. You know that it's ear. When you think about it, you're thinking about it is making that into a concealment, but you know that it's take garnished. There is some sort of feeling that it gives you that it's like trying to, it's like to hold you back. There is some sort of issue there, right? But your goal is to realize and to understand that it's really not that it's nothing. It's only there to bring you to the next level. If you will be learning Torah right now and there will be no stress from Iran, okay, it will be very good learning. But that's not the real thing. The real thing is when there is some sort of concealment. There's a concealment and you break the concealment, so then you're able to get to the, that's why we have concealments, because the Eibusha doesn't want to give you concealments. No one wants to give anyone concealments, right? The whole point is just to get us to the next level. He gives us a few examples. We give a few examples of the Rebbe. We'll finish off with this word. Avram Avinu going into the fire. So it says that Avram Avinu was going to go into the fire, and he thought he thought he was going to die in the fire, because Shem Elikim is, in this world is nature, and the fire is hot, but he didn't care. He didn't give significance to this big challenge. He made it there was nothing for him, and it was talking nothing for him. And he actually broke that concealment, because there's no reality that fire has to burn. It's not a real thing. Only Mitzad Shem Elikim. That's how it works. Mitzad Shem Havaya, the story of the water burnt the fire, right? No, the fire burned the water. Which means like the story of the guy came home and his daughter was crying. Why are you crying? And she says, because I made a mistake. The bottle is a very similar bottle. I put vinegar instead of oil. So Chanim Adesa says, was the rabbi there? He said the same one that said that oil should burn, because say vinegar should burn. Now, and that's what happened, right? So everyone says it was a ness. It was a very big miracle. Okay, you're right, it was a nest. But what happened over here? What happened over here? Mitzad Shem Elikim, mitzad nature, oil burns and vinegar doesn't. And some people are so narrow-minded, and that's how they think this world has to run. And that's how it has to be. You have to go to college, you have to do this, you have to go this. Everything is you have to. If you live your life like so, then that's how it's going to have to be for you, by the way. You're going to be, if you would think that Shem Elikim is that's what's running the world, and you can be living life so they're going to be living so boundaried and so limited and so... The rabbi over there, he understood that there's no difference between oil. But not only he said it, he actually lived his life that way. That's why for him it was like that. Which means we can't be someone that's always looking at the food and the looks of the Elokim, and all of a sudden, why is not God not giving us? Well, if you live your life, you'd always think about Havai Elokim Kol Echad, and it's all one. Elokim is not really a thing for itself; it's just to bring you the energy. It's just being megale. Not only it's not concealments. Not only that, it's also it's the strongest level of revelation, and that is the whole point that we have. Like the angel that was fighting with Yaakov Avinu, and Yaakov didn't leave him till he blessed, which means you would run away. You fight the angel. No, Yaakov did not leave the challenge until he got a blessing from that angel. Never leave any challenge, and always think, what could you gain out of that challenge? Obviously, we don't need challenges. No one wants to have any challenge. You should never have challenges. But when someone has a challenge, you just know that your job is just to continue going. Because we feel that it's hard, but when a person pushes and pushes, everything's going to... It's just in order for you to get to a higher dargah. That is the point of the Maimer B'Kitzur. Yo.